Let's create this kind of hard surface detail inside Houdini. First of all, let's start with the polydraw node. And let's just start drawing out polygons. So for our first kind of pass, what I'm gonna do is just create something like this. So maybe between this and this, then you can actually select these two and then Shift S. This is basically going to align it between the first and the last point in our geometry. After that, what you can do is go to the split and add some edge loops. So with Shift, hold down Shift, you can add edge loops like that. Let's go back to the build. So for me, it's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on keyboard. So I can quickly select between the different options for polydraw node. So then just select these and draw out this. With Shift scrolling, you can squish the selection. And before we move any further, let's extrude this detail. So let's just go inside perspective, grab this and hold down Control, and that's going to constrain our move tool on one axis. So if you move it on X, basically going to move only in X axis. So this looks good. So now all I have to do is start drawing out next one. So now that since we have this kind of detail, we can just take these, make sure we snap to this, and then hold left mouse button and then just drag it out like that. Drag it out like that. So now we should try to align all of to these. So in here we should probably add one edge loop. So for us to add anywhere edge loop, one edge loop, all you have to do is with the mouse scroll make sure that you do not have any divisions, and then just click on it, maybe somewhere here, and then just let's drag it out like that. Let's start making this. Drag out, Shift Control, Shift and left click to draw out like that. So in here, well, we're gonna have to move these a bit. So basically I want to put them right where the bevel starts, because after that we can just bevel these like that. Like that. So this is kinda, so after that all depends on how high resolution you want this mesh to be. We could go very high with many bevels, but for me, for this first pass, I'm gonna make sure that the big curves are in, and something like this you might even. Now for the first tip for the faster working with the direct modeling inside Houdini. First of all, let's go on top. So you see that I have this modeling. It's a preset. It's already created by default inside Houdini. It's basically called modeling. For me, it's F8. So if you Control, Shift, and Alt click on it, you can assign a hotkey for it. For some reason, it doesn't show that I have it, but I have it. So for me, it's F8. And what's cool about this, we can also add the hotkeys to our pie menus. So let's say, make sure that you have selected this modeling that you want to get the hotkeys for. So for me, it's basically just select on modeling and then just edit current. And on the current, you can see it's basically going to open up this, and we can add tools or delete them. So you can see you can go in and change the what kind of nodes it's going to put down. But what's cool about this, you can also add hotkeys for it. So for me, for this modify, I added fuse and polydraw nodes since we use it a lot. And then what you can do is just in shortcut, just double click on it. For me, it's already attached, so I'm going to go to maybe group and create group. So since I don't have, I'm going to double press on it. Let's say I want to add it to the X. Apply, accept, and that's it. In a group, you can see now I can create a group with just within X. So hover over this, press X. Well, I actually have to select some geometry X, and you can see it's automatically gonna put down a group node. So what's cool about this is basically overrides any existing viewport hotkeys. So you can see that by default W would be move, and it still is move for me. But if you have opened this pie menu, it doesn't really matter what kind of hotkeys you have for your viewport option, since it overrides this as long as this pie menu is open. So you can add very basic buttons like Q, V, E, D, and all of these, any button. So for me it's basically D, E, W, Q, A, and Z. It makes sense for me because it kinda goes in a circle, just like these options for me in a pie menu. Now that we have our hotkeys set up, let's start bridging this bottom of it. So in the same polygon node, just select these two, and for me I think it's Z hotkey. It's basically a bridge connect selection. You can see it's automatically going to also connect all of these edges that we are bridging to. Now let's start with extruding this inwards. So in the picture you can see it's basically, now let's extrude this inwards. So just in polytopo build, just go inside, select these, and with control limit the axis and like that, and now we want to extrude it inwards. So for this, just select the same edges that we just have and then extrude it, and put down extrusion mode to point normal so that it goes like that inwards. And now what we can do is put down another poly draw and start moving these points around. So first of all, these three, actually not these, you can see it's not super straight in our picture, so probably not. And since you're watching it also in perspective, that's just a thing you have to be mindful of. So these edges will bevel very nicely, but once you have created more geometry though. So for this, let's just start creating this. So let's start taking these and start moving these. So let's encompass all of these also, since we're gonna boolean them out anyways. Let's move them like that, like that. Then just select these. Let's extrude them up until here. So now we have to think, how can we connect these two? So we can probably take this and like that. And for this, well, we should probably add more geometry in here. So since you want to probably do it something like this, so let's just add edge loop here, connect it here, like that. Well, we could leave it even like this. If you're gonna bevel it, then we could just extrude this edge, but that's a little bit later. So for this, so we're probably gonna want to bevel these edges also. So let's add edge loop in here to start off, and let's just start drawing out the shape. So here, and this could go up until here. Then let's add an edge loop in here, and let's just, oh my bad, see, I had a cut node and I actually created polygon, so point, so delete it. And with this, just draw it out until this. So this is where we're gonna bevel it. So this leaves a good amount of space for our bevel. We're gonna bevel also these, and let's straighten out these. So select these. So make sure that these points are where we want them to be. Let's say here and here. Select them, and S, Shift S, like that. So for the bridging, we're probably gonna have to extrude it again and then bridge them, but that's a little later. So we probably want to, for the most immediate effect, you could probably start beveling also this one. So make sure we have everything done in here that you want for this pass. then just select the edge and bevel it out. So for the bevel, you can see our polygon should probably be in different places. So we also be mindful of where we want to bridge these together. So let's just go back to the poly bevel and let's move it out. You can see if we put down this play flag in here, but select this poly draw, we can kind of see the points, original points that we are beveling over. So you can just move them in the best position for our bevel like that. And before the bevel, actually let's fix up this topology since we're probably going to bevel it. Let's fix up this connection. So for our best bevel, we want only the one edge connecting to this edge. So let's just delete this. Let's delete this. Let's move it in here. And then just poly split it in here. And then just move them around like that. So this is going to ensure that once we extrude it and bevel it, it's going to look a lot nicer. And we won't have any nasty beveling artifacting, so like that. So in our bevel you can see it still selects the correct edges, but if it wouldn't be, then we just go here, select it, select the edge and bevel it again. So now what you can do is probably extrude this geometry again. So what I'm going to do is, for now, let's just extrude this one. Take this. So what we could do is extrude or poly draw. So I'm going to do it poly draw. Just select all of these. Let's extrude it again inwards. Like that. And so for our poly bridge, what we can do is actually add an edge loop inside this loop that we just created. Right at the middle, and then what we can do is just bridge these together. For the bridge, we can't actually select polygons, let's say these two, and then use the bridge command. It's actually, I think it works only on edges. So what we can do is use the stop node for the bridge. So just select these two. In the poly modeling, there's a bridge, and then ask select to which polygons to select it to. Then you select these. And so in division, let's just put it to 1, and that's it. I think so. So for if you want more resolution, let's say 2, so it's concurve, so you can put it to straight. Now let's also extrude these edges. That's back to, so if you want to just extrude it in one axis, what you can do is don't mess with any of these, just put them to 0 and just transform extruded front like that. Then you can just move it in one axis like that. Now this is good time to take care of this upper curve. So first of all, let's select it and we can probably extrude it. So let's extrude it like that, and then what we can do is bevel it. So why we're doing it like that? So since we want to probably take care of this also right now, that we can extrude it, and also the back of it, since we want to boolean, let's just take care of it right now. So the thing is that we're not really sure what's the curve for it. So I'm going to put down my symmetry HDA. So this is very simple symmetry HDA that all it's going to do is take it. So if you go inside this match size from the previous video, it's basically going to put it in one axis and then symmetrize it on the x-axis, and the output flag to make sure it always renders out the result of our HDA when we go outside this network like that. So of course if we had like a second perspective for this part, you could see that, hey, this is how thick we want it. So for now, I think I like this shape. This looks fine. And this is how our curve is going to look like. And if we want to change it, we can go back to the extrude, and let's say you want it a little bit more squished. Then just go in extrude and change it. So this looks fine. Let's leave it at this. So, and let's just give it a little bit more resolution maybe, since we're not going to change it later because we're not subdividing it anyway. So for this, let's move these out. So let's put down a poly draw, and what you can do is actually use the brush tool. So with the mouse scroll, just move it. You can see it's basically going to move these out. Let's get it a little bit smoother at the end of it, like that. Let's select all of them and then fuse it, like that. And our symmetry is gonna look like this. So we don't need to worry about this one. So since we always can change it where we symmetrize the bottom of it, we just want to make sure that our top, since we can't really change it any later on, looks nice. And now let's cap this one. So let's do all of our edits before they actually start to symmetrize it. So let's just, we can connect it to this one. So actually there's two levels for it now. So what I'm going to do is put down poly draw, drag it out like that. So now we want two of these. So what we're going to do is also get two of these that we can connect to. So select these three, also this, then just start drawing it out like that. Let's say I want to bevel this edge, we get this topology. So for this, you just draw it out like that. And for this, we can just connect it to this one probably. Let's leave it at something like this, since we're not going to bevel this one. And we want to good bevel for this one. So now let's create this kind of detail. So first of all, what you can do is start thinking about where we want this to be. So with the same poly bevel, let's add edge loop inside here. What we can do is, let's say we want to bridge these together with these on the side. What we can do is just go in the slide mode. For me it's 2, and select the sliding option. So for me, I want to just move an edge. So select edge, then select the edges you want to slide, and then don't worry about that. We might actually, let's select also this one. And now we don't have to worry about affecting topology and the movement of points, since we are basically just sliding a point. Now that we have our edges for our topology, what you can do is in a build node, start deleting these polygons, then select this, snap it to one, and snap it to another one, add an edge loop in here, in a build, snap this one here, and then select these, and snap them to this, like that. Now we could start to worrying about making sure our symmetry looks correct. But before that, I want to show another cool thing we can do. So if you take a look at back of it, since we used poly draw to extrude the back of it, you can see that these points are close, but they're not exactly right where they might have to be on two axes. So we want them be right on top of each other on the x-axis. We don't want them to be together, but we want to be matching two axes. So what you can do is actually use the transform node. So just select all the edges that you want to make sure that they are all straight, like that. Select, well, just select these two. Then just press on W, and that's going to put down edit node. And there's a cool option for the transform space. We can local origin by connectivity. So by now, since these points are all connected, they're gonna treat them individually when we transform them. And all we have to do is, so since you want to make sure they are aligned in two axes, we have to just go in scale, and Y and Z just put down 0, like that, and you can see now these points exactly where they should be. We have created them right on top of each other in two axes. Before we start building, let's create our symmetry. So for now, symmetry is, you can see it's not very well symmetrized. So also we have to cap this. So let's just, well, how can we do this? Well, let's go back to the polydraw and let's start connecting this geometry. So first of all, what I probably want to do is actually in polydraw, I just take these edges and extrude it one more time. Since in reality this object would continue with something else, but since we're just modeling part of it, we're not really sure. So now let's start to think about how can we connect this. So we know that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 edges. So we know we have to at least have one edge in here, and the second edge is going to probably go to here. So we probably can start selecting by this, and then and then just grab these together, then extrude them like that. Make sure we're not snapping any other points like that. So since we did this in a previous node, you can see that our straightening out here still works. Because basically we did not. So if you take a look at point numbers, so you can see we have basically added points. So these newest points are with the biggest number, and it did not change the values of these points because we did not delete, but we just added them. So you can see that our transform under it still works exactly what I wanted. So what we can do, what's cool about this, we can just go here and add also these points, these edges. So for this edit, go back to the origin by connectivity, like that. So quad is there, and then just put down 0 and 0 in here. Now what we can do is actually start symmetrizing it. So for now our symmetry is not symmetrized very well because there's holes in it. So let's go back to edit. First of all, we should probably delete these points because we did bridge swap node and we didn't delete these. So let's not delete this one, like that. And now let's select everything that we want to be as our symmetry line. So these edges, they just press W, go in the front. So what we can do is actually go in perspective, and for me there's a hotkey. You basically a pivot mode. In pivot mode, when we turn it on, you can see that we can move our pivot. So and with the snapping on, I'm gonna just, since you know that our symmetry works on top of it, I'm just gonna snap it in here and then go outside and then exit pivot mode. And now what you can do is just with the scale tool, you can just scale them in on the x-axis, just put down 0, and that's it. Now we have our symmetry working on all of these objects. Now one thing we can also do is control how thick is this part that we just modeled on bottom of it. So what I'm going to do is actually create a group. So in polygon selection you can actually go up here and select by normal. You can see it starts to select the chunks of it. So by default it's 60 degrees, and this is exactly what I want. Is basically create a group that's going to control how thick is this part. And also let's select these also. And let's create a group. Let's call it thickness and then transform. And let's select the thickness group. And let's take a look at the results in our symmetrized mesh. Now let's start beveling our geometry. So let's start with some of the maybe more easier points. So go in edge selection, let's select these. We could probably also bevel these a bit, but those a bit less. So I just put down our first bevel. So not a lot. There's no need really for that many points. Maybe 2, like that. For our next bevel, let's bevel out this edge. Maybe also these. So you can see that if we bevel out, let's say 1 time, we're getting this kind of result. And 2 times you could try to, let's select also these that you want to bevel for the better result, like that. Like that. So there's really no need for lots of geometry in here. All depends on what kind of geometry it's going to be used for. Now we could also bevel these. Let's bevel them. So let's just, you can see that it drops me back. Why is it doing that? Oh, I have a snapping on. I'm just gonna change it to 1. Just enough to get the roundness, but not go over crazy with the bevels on it. So that's that. Maybe in here. Also think about this edge at the very bottom. So we know that we're gonna bevel this one. Probably could start beveling also up until here. Let's just select up until this. Let's bevel it. Let's also include this, like that. So I want to probably go pretty big with this bevel, because in geometry, let's put down null. Because the geometry, it looks kind of pretty smooth in geometry, looks like. So but this is kind of how it's going to look. That looks pretty good for that. So you could also add another loop, but for that I think 2 is good enough. For the bottom of it, let's bevel also these out a bit, like that. So let's take a look what we have left to bevel off. So we could bevel these. And for maybe for the more, like that. That looks pretty good. So let's take a look at our symmetrized look. Another cool thing is that another thing I'd like to talk about is setting up a default option. So let's bevel these two. You can see my now defaults are different, because what I did is basically, once I have a setting that I like, I go in this gear and select save as permanent default. So that's going to make us get these settings every time when we put down a new poly bevel node. Now to finish off our beveling, let's bevel this part. So let's start selecting these that we definitely want to bevel. Let's also bevel up until here, like that. Also we could select this one maybe too. So this top what we don't want to bevel. So in here, let's just go until here, on top of it, and this part. Maybe let's bevel also this one, this. Then take a look at this, up until here maybe, like that. I just put down the bevel. Let's take a look how it looks. Let's add maybe one more. Let's put down a normal. And the normal, let's select weight by face area, like that. take a look at our bevels in here. Doesn't look too bad. One thing to note that this bevel is still, we are putting up a material on it, so it shouldn't look too bad. See, there's a problem in here, so you have kind of over beveled it in here. Let's put to individually, so we do not over bevel it in here, like that. One more thing, maybe let's not bevel this edge, so let's go back to our bevel and let's reselect it. So let's not bevel this, let's just bevel until here, like that. And with the face area normal, let's get that nice result. And let's also bevel the back of this part, so let's just, where our last bevel ended, let's just start selecting these and up until the very top of it, like that. And cinch this a little bit sharper, so just make sure it's a little sharper detail, like that. The artifacting shouldn't be too bad on the bottom right. So since you put our normal, like that. So now let's actually start creating some of these other details. Now let's create these kind of details. So this is going to be a separate part, and also this one. So one thing to know that we're probably gonna want to do it in a new geometry node. So one thing to note that once we go outside this node, you see it's by default basically going to render whatever we have selected it. So if we have this null node selected, we go outside, you can see it's gonna render it out. So for the, to make sure that it's always outputs our end of our network, what we do is put down an output flag. So inside our network we can, let's take a look at our very first node, but once we go outside it, you can see it's basically going to automatically render out all of our objects. So that's one thing, but you can see that once I go outside my network, actually it does not follow it. So preferably I would now be looking at this geometry node, so I can select different geometry. So that's why this one comes in. So you can see it's now not following selection. So just deselect it, and now every time, so let's say go outside this, create a box. So now we have two objects, and once I select, let's say I select this box and go inside the vertex selection, it's gonna automatically go inside this node, and once I press Q for me, go outside this network to select different object, press vertex selection of whatever button or whatever the operation I want to do, it's automatically going to open up my network. So that's two things to make it less confusing work with Houdini. So now let's go inside this network and create our details. Let's put down poly draw node. Start drawing this out. So since we're gonna bevel these and these and these, so just start with something like this. Like that. Just move this out. Like this. The one thing we want to do is actually delete this edge. You see it's going to disappear. So what I want to do is actually press down a labs dissolve flat edges node and put it to 0. So we just delete this edge, but we still have our form. So that's going to be very obvious why we're doing it. So let's just bevel this one. They can give pretty, maybe not too much geometry tree, but let's bevel also this one, like that. So if we wouldn't have dissolved, you can see that whenever we would bevel these edges where there's this line, you get all of these points. So we just dissolve it before we bevel it, and now we have one uniform polygon. So now let's create the actual, let's put down a null. Now let's put this hole, create this hole. So that we could do with booleans, but for that we want to do some geometry for our grid. So with that we can use another tk node. Just write it So the lab sticker node, which is basically going to, just as it describes, it's basically going to thicken out our geometry. So you can also in both directions, like that, without putting down extrusions, automatically thicken it. Now let's put down a tube. Make sure it's in x-axis. Let's make it radius scale and let's try to match it to this hole. So first of all, what I want to do is probably create this bigger hole, because you can see there's kind of extrusion on the second one. Like that. Let's add enough geometry for our extrusion to look nice. So in here doesn't really matter. So in boolean, connect thicken and boolean. Make sure it's at subtract, like that. You can see we get these black borders. That's because we don't have a normal for one of these objects, I guess. Probably for the thicken you can see. Okay, there's for the tube there's no normal, but for now it doesn't really matter. We can add normal information later. So now we have this hole. In the boolean, what I want to do is actually go and output our primitive group's reversed faces. Then we want to extrude again, and then in extrusion reference our reversed faces group. You can see it's basically the group that's created all of these faces. And for us to extrude these, just go in first extrude and select the side group extrusion side group, and then just duplicate this pull extrude. And the second one, instead of reversed group, the extrude side group extruded. So this is completely procedural way we can create this. So it really doesn't matter now how many columns we have. It's always going to reference these groups and not the actual primitive number. So now let's try to combine these two objects. So first of all, you can see that we have a problem because actually the first object, so this object actually has a hole in it. So let's go to these objects that we just created. Let's put an output flag for a null node for this tube that we are using. So what I'm going to do is just put on a null node, which basically does nothing, but with all caps I'm gonna to bool. So this is going to be the node that we want to boolean this out of our object. So let's go back to our main part, and once we have, and we want to do all of this on our airtight model. So that's going to be after we have symmetrized it. So put on a boolean node, and then object merge, and in this object merge we want to reference our to bool from our object box 1 geo node. So you can see that all the nodes that has caps on it are in the first. So this basically making sure that we write it in all caps, basically make sure that we will see them first in our list of nodes in other networks. So just click on it and then just boolean it. Now that we have our hole, let's take a look at our other objects. You can see when I show all objects replaced, you can see that we are getting this tube from the first object. But of course this is not what we want to render out. What we want to see is this object. So let's put down an output flag to make sure we always see this one. And you see there's a little bit problem since we need a little bit bigger geometry. So let's go to the thicken node and thicken it up like that. Now let's create another geo node. Let's start making these cutouts. So let's start with this one. So I'm gonna put down a curve. Make sure that it's at polygon. Then once you have 3, you can just close curve like that and press enter. Then duplicate it and reset selection and then create a new one. Enter again. So for these two, that looks good enough. So let's just work with these two booleans right now. First of all, we definitely want to bevel them. Just bevel them like that. For this, gonna create the two different bevels like that, and then bevel it out this one like that. So now we have two of these objects. Let's merge them. Let's thicken it down. Let's involve directions. Let's just go back to our main part, and after this boolean, we can actually probably add to this also. Just press on plus, then let's reference. Let's go back to this geo and let's put down null node to bool. Let's go back to our main part, which is this, and then here let's just, so we know it's in geo1 and also this. You can see we have this black border. Let's fix it right now. So it's basically from the tube that we just booleaned out. So let's go here, go to this, and just put down a normal node before we reference this one. So that should fix it up like that. So now let's create these small details. So what I did, well, when no one was watching, you guys didn't watch it. So what I did is created these kind of details. So these are going to be my small parts. So basically set these holes and all of these. So now I want to boolean them, but the thing is that although these are in different places, and also that I want to boolean them in different places. So for the setup it's very simple, just a couple of copy nodes and all that, bevels, edit, place them where there, the merge, normal, and then we want to output, I want to null node it, and let's say, actually we don't, let's do it without a null, just say, hey, this small bool, want to reference it in our bigger boolean. So let's go to our big page, big model, and let's create another boolean. Just duplicate it in here, object merge it. Let's just copy this one also with alt drag it. Let's delete these. Let's add new object, and let's reference the entire geo node that we have, the so small bool. So you don't even have to reference any particular node, since you want to reference all of the geo node. Just double click it and that's it. Now we have brought this one up, and let's boolean it. But of course there's a couple of problems, because before a couple of these has to be in different elevations. So what I want to do is actually put down transform like that. Let's move it out. You see that now we can control it, but of course you want to control them individually. So, but the problem is that we can't really select it with live view of what we're booleaning it, because we have this bounding box around this object. So that's where we want to go in. This is my pro tip. I know, maybe it's number 4 maybe. Go in and display, just over the viewport, press D, and you can see that set display options. So in this set display options, go to the current model geometry. You can see that it's set for wire bounding box. So this is how we can tell that this is what we want to change. So in that, just change it to maybe wireframe. You can see we are now seeing these objects, although we have visibility flag on our main page boolean like that. But if we just select this transform model, you can see we are seeing this wireframes for these boolean nodes, and then we can just double click on it, press W, and then in live view individually select them and boolean them out like that. Now that we're happy with our booleans, let's mirror them on the other side. So just put down a symmetry node. In symmetry, I have a setup for mirror X like that. You can see you're now mirroring them exactly at the same place on the other side too. Now for this part, let's just create a kind of a tube. Let's just, because we did a lot of subtraction, let's try it out with the union. So on x-axis, let's just place it maybe in here like that. Let's squish it like that. Let's just take these two and let's extrude it. inwards. It's going to be like that. Then just extrude again inwards like that. Let's just duplicate this boolean. For this, let's set it to the union. And let's connect it in here. Let's put down a normal. Like that. Let's take a look at the result. So these two definitely has to be a little bit more squished together. Like that. The extrudes. I mean, it's really hard to tell what kind of geometry it's even is, so just as a demonstration, I think this is going to be work just fine. So I just squish it together like that, and our extrude is messing up with this, so I just do it like that. So this is our union. You can see it's basically, well, it's exactly how it sounds like. It's unionized without any polygons inside, as you can see. Now let's create this back part of the object. So for that I want to actually sample this geometry. So what I'm going to do is go outside before we beveled any of the geometry. So somewhere in here. So what I want to do is just take, let's turn off by select by normal. I want to select all of these, and then in the poly modeling pie menu there's actually extract feature. So extract is going to basically create a new object, geometry, and it's basically going to be extracted only those points, only those polygons that we have selected. Then let's extrude them. Let's extrude them by front, like that. Now what we'll do is just select some of these points and move them around. So first of all, let's turn off this one. Let's just move these here, here, like that. So for the extrude, let's also output back, and also this means that our edit is now all messed up, so I have to delete it, and let's do it again. Just move it like that, like that. Let's take a look at on top. So we do want to basically match the original one, so like that, and let's turn on all the edge objects. So first of all, let's put an output flag here. Let's just select it and see how to bevel it. So on how to bevel it, let's start just selecting these edges. Actually, bevel it just exactly the same amounts in here. So 2 in here, in here, and here. So it's kind of matches our bevel. So probably the most important part is to match bevel in here. So let's take a look what's going on in here. Okay, actually went to bevel not the points but the edges, like that. Let's just go one front and let's just move this in here. Now that you have matched it, let's symmetrize it with my symmetrize node. So symmetrize next, but for that we probably want to delete these polygons. That's our symmetry line, like that. And now let's bevel them. So before the symmetry, actually before the symmetry. So blast it, select the edges that you want to bevel out. These. So for the bevel, let's make it somehow like that. So I did a little bit of booleans inside here. So for this I just did it inside here. So I just created these, copied them, moved them around, bevel them, thicken them up, transform, basically the same setup as that, then just boolean them out. So for the chamfering though, what you can do with every boolean operation, there is actually output edge seam. So all the edges that we just created, what you can do is just create an AB seams and then just put down a bevel and then reference this seam, so AB seams like that. Then you can see it's going to bevel it out, and if it doesn't like the issue getting this artifacting, just put down normal and put it to face area like that. It all depends on how far you want to go with the detail. So, and since you want to do it also with the other part, so before the boolean, let's just put down symmetry node and let's symmetrize it on X also like that. To speed up this process, I did some modeling in here. So in here I basically just created a tube, slanted it, and then just added some poly edge loops, and then just squish it together to speed up this process, because see this, I think it's going to be over hour long. So after that I added some of these booleans that you see in the picture. So these, so it's not totally accurate, but it's good for practice. And on back of it, there's, you can see there's these kind of fins, but I didn't bother to make them, so I guess I'm just too lazy for now. So because I do want to talk about how can we process the geometry and bake out some soft edges on these hard edges, or how can we bevel them. So first of all, as I showed in the back of it, you can always bevel these edges. So for every boolean, so let's say our boolean is this, so this is our, so we have a couple of booleans actually. So this is this boolean. So this is our what is, let's say, the main boolean. Let's just say, well, so did we actually, oh, so we extracted this one. So after this boolean, let's create AB seams and then let's bevel again. Let's reference AB seams like that. So if you take a look, let's add it to 2. So we could bevel some of these edges like that. So, and since we put down a, after all of this, we should probably put down a normal by face area like that. But I intend to going to actually bake out round edge shader. So all of these hard edges I'm gonna bake out as a round shader. We're gonna save on our polygon count, and it's gonna look pretty much just as good as a with tight bevel. So if you don't have to worry about weird topology. So first of all, what I wanted to show is the rendering option. So put down a quick game dev material, which is basically where we're gonna put our rounded shader. So put in small value, so make sure that the render flag is on this geometry, and to see the results you actually can take this render region, select it, and then just drag out on the viewport. So that's going to start rendering it. Let's just wait a bit, and you'll see the one problem there is, so which I didn't realize up until now. So now you can see we're getting this round shader. If you add more of it, you see our edges are now even rounder. Something like maybe this. Looks nice. But if you will notice that we do not have our booleans on top for some reason, so it was very weird for me. So there is no booleans on top because we do not have a render flag on our small parts that we are booleaning out. So you see that, let's say we are merging these together, putting down normal and put down, let's say, output flag. But you see that our render flag is actually only on our circle, and only circle is going to render out. So what you have to do is make sure that our render flag is actually on the very last node that we are outputting. So for me it's now an output node. So if you go back to our big piece, so let's go back to our piece. Now that our render flag is set up in there, let's try it again. Now you can see that we are also rounding out these parts of the geometry since we have a render flag on. So that's one thing to know that might confuse you, because it did also confuse me. You can see that our small parts also have visibility flag on it. So you can see that on back of it it's rendering it. So turn it off. Now it's only rendering this one. Now let's bring all of our objects inside this node. So, but when do we apply this material to all of these objects? So right now it's only this one. So put down a merge. It's actually going to follow merge. It's called object merge and object merge. Let's add all of the parts. So we're going to add the back, then add another one, the back, front, and add another one. So that's going to be the separate geo like that. So now we have this and this. So now you can take these two, alt drag and merge them together, and then apply this to quick material to every one of these. So now with this material applied, you can see we're getting very nice round edges on this object, and make sure you have turn off visibility only for the main part. So this is basically ready for the baking. But before baking, what you should do is actually UV unwrap. So I do have a couple of videos about UV unwrapping, but in this video I really like the Rhizome UV unwrapper. It's very simple and gives excellent results without you have to do anything. So what I'm going to do, I have this simple baker setup. So what I'm going to do is just bring out everything outside. Let's take a look at it. So actions and extract contents. So for my simple baker, there are a couple of things. So let's delete this. Let's add this quick material to here. So maybe let's just copy its value inside my already having one. So let's delete this one. So before we do anything with this merge ready for the baker, what I have done is dividing it. So before you bake out any of this high resolution detail from round edge shader, you have to triangulate your mesh. So this is what divide node does. So for these usually work for me. Settings, then you want to clean it up. So for the clean, if it gives you this result, just remove the generate primitives, uncheck it. So make sure it doesn't give you anything weird. So this looks fine. And now this is my Rhizome UV. So this is where you would do your UV unwrapping. So for me, it's basically hard edges, sharp edges, and I just press on cook. So you can see it opens up the program and makes very nice UVs with basically zero input from my side. You can see it's very nicely laid out. Basically, I'm gonna link some of my UV unwraps in this video. This is already too long, so but for me it's just using UV, or if you want to use the Houdini tools, which are pretty good. Once you have UV unwrapped, we have this connectivity node, which is basically when you start baking it, you want every separate part, every part that's not connected with each other, to be on its own part of the geometry. So then it would not intersect with each other and would not create this kind of a basically the artifact. So make sure it's exploded. Once you have our quick material added, we can either go with the simple baker or mouse baker. So mouse baker is basically the one, it's super fast. It can render out 4K maps in like seconds, but it does require you to have actually high resolution mesh that you can bake from on the top of the raw resolution mesh. So something like from ZBrush, or if you have subdivide mesh, and this time we do not have one. So this is for the actually if you have a high resolution mesh that you want to project details on. Since we are using rounded edge shader, which is mantra based, so we have to use the actually mantra based node, which is simple baker. So mouse baker is actually cops based node, so that's compositing operators inside Houdini. That's why it's super fast. But for us, we have to use this rounded edge shader, so that's a mantra. So it's not super fast, but we do not need to have an actual high resolution mesh. We can use just a rounded edge shader. So You can see I have baked it out. You can see we're getting all of this rounded shader look. In Substance Painter, I just added this material, and you can see I'm just gonna drag in my normal map. You can see what kind of difference it does. It makes it a lot softer and look like there's a lot more polygons that there actually is. So that's it for this video. Take care and see you next time.